In this lecture, let's create a namespace. It's very easy to use them. In Visual Studio Code, open the robot.cs file. For the rest of this course, you should always have Visual Studio Code open. We're going to be writing code regularly. Previously, we cleared the contents of this file to start from scratch. At the top of the file, type the following: namespace. After typing the namespace keyword, the name gets highlighted by the editor. This behavior is worth noting. In C#, there are words reserved by the language. If we type these words, the program will perform a specific action. The word namespace is known as a reserved keyword in the language. In the resource section of this lecture, I provide a link to a list of keywords. There are numerous keywords under the language. Don't worry, we'll be going through most of them. Feel free to read up on each keyword as we learn them. Let's go back to our editors. Be careful when writing code. If you were to write a reserved keyword, the program might perform an action that you didn't intend for it to do. In this case, we're interested in creating a namespace. After typing the namespace keyword, we need to provide a name for our namespace. There are a few rules for writing names from within our code. Alphabetic, numeric, and underscore characters are allowed from within a name. On the other hand, special characters or spaces are not allowed. As long as we follow these rules, we shouldn't encounter errors in our program. It might seem ridiculous, but there are various naming conventions offered by the community. To be more specific, there are 3 common naming conventions. The first naming convention is called camel casing. Words are strung together without spaces. For readability, each word is capitalized except for the first word. The second naming convention is called snake casing. All letters are lowercase. In addition, words are separated with an underscore character. Lastly, we have a naming convention called Pascal case. It's similar to camel casing. However, all words are capitalized, including the first word. The question becomes, which naming convention do we use? All naming conventions are valid. Neither Unity nor C# will throw an error for being inconsistent with your names. For namespaces, developers prefer to use Pascal casing. But why? Pascal casing is considered to be a standard set forth by Microsoft. Therefore, most developers prefer to follow Microsoft's lead. In the resource section of this lecture, I provide a link to an article by Microsoft with more info. This article provides extensive information on the naming conventions for namespaces. For the game we're developing, we will not be following all rules. The game is going to be reasonably small. I don't think there's a point in over-engineering the final product. Throughout this course, I will try my best to point out best practices. At the end of the day, you have complete freedom with the naming conventions of your code. Let's head back to the editor. After the namespace keyword, the name of our namespace will be called RPG. Lastly, add a pair of curly brackets. We've successfully created a namespace. Anything written inside the parentheses will belong to this namespace. We're not done yet. We'll be writing a lot of code. Namespaces can be organized into nested namespaces. You can think of them as nested folders. After the name of our namespace, add the following: .example. The dot acts as a separator. It's similar to a / character for directories. Once again, this step is optional. However, it's going to be easier to organize our code with nested namespaces. A common practice among Unity developers is using the genre or the game's name as the first namespace. The second namespace is the name of the folder. In our case, we're using rpg.example. We're finished with our namespace. In the next lecture, let's start creating objects.